and take you away. All right, folks. Now, the next statement made by the propagandists over at Nat Geo is an amazing one. They make this experiment where they have a steel beam and then they're going to compact it with all this thermite because they know that if it's not set up in a certain way and it's not the nanothermite that Stephen Jones talks about, they're not going to get the results that Stephen Jones and other architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth and physicists out there are talking about. But then they make a blanket statement, just a ridiculous blanket statement, that if this thermite can't melt the steel, well, then no kind of thermite can melt the steel. And even though he's talked about nanothermite and super thermite since its inception. So let's play this clip right here, and then we are going to show you not only, we're going to show you the molten metal clips, the eyewitnesses to this very molten metal. Not just the molten metal pouring out that we showed you last segment. We're going to show you there was molten metal in the basements of the World Trade Center. So let's hit this clip right now.
The demolition team designs a four-sided flange and welds it onto the column. Since thermite is not explosive, it must be held in tight contact with the column until it heats up enough to melt the steel. Clay is added to the flange and the welds to protect them from the heat and focus the melting action on the column.
Can I talk to him when we get back? The thermite is not going to explode. It's not going to cause a boom. What you're going to see is basically a fire. It's going to be a much slower process.
The team scaled their experiment to see if the steel column, somewhat smaller than those in the World Trade Center, could be sheared with 175 pounds of commercial-grade thermite. If thermite melts through this steel column, the theory of a thermite-controlled demolition may have some validity. While the truthers insist that more explosive super thermite could have been used in the tower demolitions, testing conventional thermite can illuminate this physical process and answer a simple question. Can thermite of any type burn through steel beams?
All right, let's stop. So the regular thermite is now testing for thermite of any type, a total and complete lie, a false statement. But they prep the retarded viewer, the person who's watching this, just, I can't wait for these 9/11 truthers to be debunked. I'm sick of this talk. I love my country. Nobody, I love my country. I'm pissed. I mean, she just makes the statement. I mean, she talks about the super thermite, the nanothermite, but then says that this thermite experimentation will not only illuminate it, but will test whether any kind of thermite, including the kind patented by the U.S. military, whether that could do it. Total false, total lie, totally unbelievable. But this is how they roll. All right, so we're going to go all the way back to the first video. We are going to go back to another excerpt of Loose Change Final Cut, where again, we show you officials and firefighters, as well as Pataki and Giuliani, talking about 2,000-plus degree temperatures and molten metal at the scene of the World Trade Center after the attacks. Remember, this can't exist in their little official wonder world of Alice in Wonderland. In their world where they send out provocateurs who wear Puff the Magic Dragon costumes and party hats at memorials for the dead. All right, let's hit it.
2. Molten metal exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit was discovered in the rubble of Ground Zero, underneath the Twin Towers, and Building 7. Even with heavy rain on September 14th and 21st, a constant stream of fire retardants and water, described as creating a giant lake. These fires would not be extinguished until December 13th, 2001, making it the longest burning structural fire in history. Was the jet fuel responsible? Dr. Frank Gale, who was working with NIST, claimed in 2005. Your gut reaction would be that the jet fuel melted the steel. Indeed, it did not. The steel did not melt.
The temperatures that we know existed within the collapse, within the debris pile, are physically impossible from an atmospheric jet fuel fire. Cannot be done.
I'm curious about the pool of molten steel that was found in the bottom of the towers.
I am too.
And
please tell me about it. Have you seen it?
Well, not personally, but eyewitnesses there found huge pools of molten steel beneath the towers, and some scientists don't think that the collapse of the building could have melted all that steel.
First of all, let's go back to your basic premise that there was a pool of molten steel. I know of absolutely nobody, no eyewitness who said so, nobody who's produced it. I was on the site, I was on the steel yards, so I don't know that that's so.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry.
Yeah. Like lava.
Like it was lava
from a volcano.
Underground, it was still so hot that molten metal dripped down the sides of a wall from Building 6.
However, they do hit hot spots occasionally, and everything stops.
There were fires of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit below the ground.
I don't know that that's so.
There's video of it.
Around 2,600
All right, let's stop it. That's John Gross of NIST, by the way, having to, again, deny the molten metal. And then he says, well, can you show me these thermal images that you're talking about? And actually, it's a professor at that university who's talking to him. He tries to get his email so that he can send him the photos. And John Gross is like, look, man, I'm not interested. You don't need my email address. Goodbye. We have the official version. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in the cover-up. They're interested in their paycheck. They're interested in their careers. They're yes men. They go along to get along. And if they're not willing to cover up, someone else is, and they'll take their position. That's how the system works. I mean, look at this Van Jones guy. All right, I haven't really talked about it. I could really care less. I'm not with his eco policies, but he seemed to be a 9/11 truther. As soon as his job was in jeopardy, he disavows his 9/11 truth roots, his background. He just, I never knew any of this. I don't take this position. It is my signature. And now he was forced to resign. And the headlines is that Obama and his administration didn't make him resign. Yeah, right. Of course they did. Of course they did. They said, hey, look, we know something's wrong there, but we just can't have that kind of heat around this administration, so you're going to have to go. So there you have it, molten metal on the scene of the World Trade Center. Plenty of officials talking about that molten metal, but in the official version, it's impossible because then the truthers are actually making a point. They won't show you that evidence on the Nat Geo hit piece. All right, so we're going to jump now from the World Trade Center, the thermite, the explosions, into the Pentagon. And in this next segment, at 1 hour and 12 minutes into the thing, the planes don't cut the columns in the Pentagon, but they cut them at the World Trade Center. And the plane essentially, they're saying, turns into a lava flow. This is from Purdue, who did both simulations. So again, they're having their cake and eating it too. On one, it goes right through the building. It severs main columns in the core of the World Trade Center. But now it hits the Pentagon. It severs no columns, and it liquefies. Let's hit the clip.
Facade. "189 people are killed." Purdue University analyzed this sequence of events and created a visual simulation of the attack.
We had the plans for the Pentagon, all the details, right down to the last reinforcing bar. The speed of the airplane and the direction from which came was given to us by the Transport Safety Institute, which presumably came from the black box that they found afterwards.
Purdue broke down the event into its basic components. Flight 77's path, its trajectory, the fuselage breaking up, and aftermath.
And what you're seeing here is that as the plane enters, the columns cut in the front, which is pretty fragile. It's really nothing but a cylinder. And when the column comes, it cuts into it. The Pentagon building itself killed no one. There was a collapse about 25 minutes later after the firemen came there and started filling the building full of water.
All right, let's stop it right there. So again, you notice that the columns in the Pentagon cut the plane up, and the plane becomes some kind of lava-like substance. But when it hits the World Trade Center, the wings cut the girders in the World Trade Center. Double standard? I mean, it's so obvious. Just watch them side by side. It's like, how do people not see this? Yet, this is the proof. And then later, the next clip we're going to show you on the other side of this break is this guy talking about how all the evidence showed that Hani Hanyour was a crappy pilot and they were right. Yet, and I wish I had pulled this clip, but I didn't have the time. I didn't find it. In Loose Change Final Cut, if you listen to the people in NORAD who were following the plane that was going into the Pentagon, they all thought it was a military aircraft because it was moving like a military aircraft. They thought help was on the way.